Clear. I don't want my parents involved in this at all. You know, like I don't want them to know. No, like I'm a high school student. And like if I don't get in front of a magistrate to call you, right? Okay, fine. They gave me one phone call, and the guard was like waiting for me at the end of the hall. The hall smelled like a boys' room, like no one has flushed a toilet. I was looking into the cells, and people were looking out like drunk. And I wasn't drunk, and I didn't stab anybody, and I didn't mug anybody, and I didn't steal anything. And here I was being treated like all these people.
He's 17, a high school senior, a higher than average IQ, inquisitive, well-liked by students and teachers. His name is Charles, but close friends call him Chuck or Charlie, and he's behind bars. It's thousands of years old, and its name is cannabis sativa. It's also known as marijuana, pot, grass, weed. This common weed that grows nearly everywhere can intoxicate you. In our time, it's also proved increasingly seductive to young people like Charlie Johnson. And the convergence of their two paths, youth and weed, is prompting new looks at an old drug and the impact it can have on a single life.
I'm not going to tell him that he has to stop using marijuana, that it's bad for him, etc. What I am going to say to him is that he has to make certain decisions. That even though he may have experimented with marijuana and found it nothing more than a mild intoxicant that has no serious or permanent effect on him, that I'm going to say that it has a lot of legal implications.
It's marijuana.
Legal implications is a gentle way to describe the trouble a person can get into over marijuana. Its possession is prohibited in practically every country in the world. In 28 of the United States, possession constitutes a felony. Severe penalties have produced a new breed of drug specialists, lawyers like Bernard L. Siegel, who recognize that the marijuana problem involves much more than laws. Siegel's approach to each case is intensely personal.
Well, let me ask you, Mrs. Johnson, did Charles tell you anything more about the circumstances of his arrest?
Well, not too much, except they were standing in the park, and they may have been smoking. He didn't give me too many of the facts.
All right. Do you know whether Charles has been smoking marijuana for long?
I don't think he's been smoking for long, but he did admit that he had been smoking before this.
I gather from the way you put it, though, that you didn't have any knowledge prior to this time that Charles had been using marijuana.
Oh, no, none at all.
One of the reasons Charles's situation is so serious to me, Mrs. Johnson, is the fact that under the law of our state, the crime of possession of marijuana is a felony.
Weight, 162. Step down, put your back against the board. 5'7", medium, brown, hazel, medium. Just stand there. Hold your arms out in front of your palms up. Scar left wrist inner. No other marks. Have a seat in that chair. Sit up straight in the chair. Look right here. Swing around in the chair and face the star on the wall. Push your hair away from your eyes. Lower your chin. Hold it. Stand up against that wall. Face the camera. Put your feet together. Your hands down to your sides. Stand up straight. Face this way. Turn your body. Face the X on the wall. Close your mouth.
Cannabis sativa, the common marijuana plant, appears in history as hemp, whose fibers made strong rope. It was used for this purpose at least 3,000 years before Christ. Clothes were woven from it by the Scythians in southern Russia. They also discovered that the smoke from burning hemp seeds made them extremely drunk. For the ancient Chinese, marijuana or hemp would become a medicine to be chewed, drunk, or smoked. It was also shared with friends at social gatherings. The Indians attached religious significance to marijuana and processed it into sweets, milkshakes, and again for use in pipes. Known in Africa and the Near East as hashish, the resin from the female marijuana plant is to this very day the intoxicant most favored by the Arabs. Cannabis as a drug did not catch on in Europe until the 1800s. Then a handful of literary figures took it up and exaggerated its powers for good and bad far beyond its real effect. While in this country, medicines made from marijuana were available until 1937, and Squibb, Eli Lilly, and Port Davis recommended cannabis extracts for asthma, tension, pain. In the early 1900s, Mexicans brought marijuana across the border. Merchant seamen introduced it to New Orleans as an intoxicant, and its usage spread into America's heartland by Mississippi steamboat. In the 1920s and 30s, with alcohol prohibited, fears mushroomed that what had been primarily a non-white drug would break out of the ghetto and sabotage the American work ethic on which the establishment was founded. Sensational news stories began popping up that told of marijuana driving men mad, of young children addicted, even deaths. It didn't matter that the stories weren't based on fact. People believed. Outraged parents demonstrated, and Hollywood jumped in to capitalize on the public panic, exaggerating the drug's effect.
Master. Master. Play faster. Play faster. Faster.
Your Honor, in this case, the state waives trial of the defendant, Ralph Wiley. It is convinced that he is hopelessly and incurably insane, a condition caused by the drug marijuana to which he was addicted. It is recommended, Your Honor, that the defendant be placed in an institution for the criminally insane for the rest of his natural life.
I see no reason why the request should not be granted.
We know now that marijuana does not cause insanity. It does not provoke violence. It is not addictive. But the debris from such muddled notions lingers on. The effect has been a radical counter-reaction. Today, marijuana supporters are just as biased in their claims for pot as their parents and grandparents were in denouncing it.
When I'm high, my head works more intelligently, more accurately.
Well, I could express my opinions better and I can open up with people.
I'm 18, an art student, and I do believe in smoking marijuana. I just enjoy getting stoned.
You feel like euphoria, how they pronounce it?
Or euphoria.
Euphoria, yeah, very happy. Then you question your goals, like what have I done in life and that kind of trash.
You can at certain moments with certain musics, certain environments such as by the sea have some rewarding spiritual relationships with the rest of the universe.
It occasionally gets me in trouble. I got locked up just a week ago.
I believe that the oppression upon the plant is another form of political oppression on the part of an established order. Marijuana threatens the entire political and behavioral and social pattern of the United States.
Once thought to be favored by young people on the fringes of established society, marijuana is no longer just their thing. More and more we hear of stockbrokers, advertising people, lawyers, doctors, writers who once a week smoke pot.
Okay, fine.
I'm 26 years old, I'm a public accountant, and I smoke.
It's like a drink, you know, it helps you relax.
It's good as liquor.
I mean, let's face it, if the world was perfect, nobody would get high.
Relaxes me, makes me feel happy. That's all.
I feel that a lot of the fear is due to the fact that the use of marijuana is spreading into the middle and upper classes.
I've tried it. I could live without it. I got the giggles. That was about all.
A naive person can get sucked into something more detrimental to them.
It always leads to something stronger. It's been proven.
Habit forming, and it's a deteriorating sort of thing.
It upsets the brains.
Once you start on this drug, you can't get away from it. And it finally leads to death.
For most people, especially those over 40, Hollywood did its work well, and the extremism of the 30s still dominates their thinking. 80% of all Americans favor strong laws against marijuana. And despite a growing clamor to legalize the weed, nearly 70% support the strictest of enforcement, even as they did 3 decades ago. Their attitudes are reflected by the police.
I think it would be one of the biggest disasters this country would ever face if they were to legalize marijuana.
Alcohol is wrong don't mean that we should now have 2 wrongs. Now we have to worry about 2 classes of people, the alcohol abusers and the marijuana abusers.
I've seen boys come up here 3 years ago that were on marijuana, then come back after 3 years and find them with tracks on their arms that look like a Reading Railroad. They're so bad on heroin.
I really don't feel that society could accept something like marijuana and be able to control the people that advance into the heroin stage.
We have a lot of kids that are weak, or adults that are weak, and this is their escape by using drugs, whether it be marijuana or it be heroin.
Hey, Yui. We got a couple of buddies coming up from the 9th District, so be on your toes.
Sergeant Gallagher said he'd give it to me. Thanks.
As obviously decent kids from all sectors of the community come in conflict with the marijuana laws, thoughtful police seek to distinguish between one who uses and one who sells.
When you get a kid with a cigarette...
Right, the full force of the law shouldn't be applied to this kid.
No, he should be...
Right,
everybody's entitled to one mistake.
Right, I agree.
Now, this kid might have a good record. He might have been a good student.
Right. Victim of circumstances.
Right. He gets mixed up with the wrong crowd, so he gets grabbed with one cigarette.
Right.
Right? Or he gets grabbed with a roach.
Right, as the law reads now...
But yet, the law says possession...
Felony.
It's a felony, he gets 2 years.
Right.
Well, I personally don't feel this is right in this particular case. But when you get an individual that's got 20 pounds of marijuana.
Not even 20. 5 pounds. 5 pounds.
Or a
6
pound.
A pound. You know he's dealing.
But marijuana laws, no matter who they're enforced against, can be effective only if they're based on fact. And marijuana laws are flawed. Legally, grass is classified a narcotic. Actually, it's not. Nor is it an hallucinogen, nor a stimulant, nor a depressant, but it has elements of all. Marijuana has both male and female plants, with the female resin, stems and leaves, far more intoxicating than the male. Its chemical structure is complex, with the most active element believed to be THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. The most comprehensive study of marijuana yet made was completed more than 75 years ago. A 3,000-page report compiled by the Indian Hemp Commission, it concluded that with moderate use, there was no evidence of physical damage. New York City's LaGuardia report in the late 1930s reached the same conclusion. Though we know little more about marijuana today than we did in 1895, some general conclusions can be drawn. Smoking may cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. There may be an increase in the pulse rate. It was once thought that the marijuana smoker could be recognized by his dilated pupils. Researchers now say there is little, if any, dilation. The mouth and throat may feel dry and parched. The smoker may suffer mild tremors. Though there is no change in blood sugar, there is hunger and a high appreciation for food. Time seems to move more slowly. Psychologically, where one smokes, when one smokes, what one expects has much to do with a person's marijuana experience. If while smoking, your brain sees a chair in a neutral setting, there may be little or no reaction. If surroundings are luxurious, the sensation may be pleasant. But if one's afraid, if youth where he comes from is considered socially deviant, if he doesn't think much of himself, he may get bad reactions, ranging from mild depression to extreme anxiety, even panic. In some cases, symptoms may last or recur days or weeks after having smoked. The way psychological and chemical quirks interact with marijuana to alter perception has only recently become the subject of laboratory research. Here we've discovered that marijuana seems to have little effect in simple tests involving speed. But when it comes to matching colors or remembering numbers which require judgment and physical coordination, there is impairment. Once the government blocked such testing, now it underwrites scientists as they try to define more accurately the marijuana experience. Even so, no one predicts we'll find out all we need to know about long-term effects in less than 10 to 15 years. Highly practical and needed experiments into short-term aspects of the drug involve marijuana and automobiles. To compare drivers who've been drinking, smoking pot, and when sober, a driving simulator has been employed. So far, tests show that alcohol increases errors involving brakes, speedometer, and turn signals. No significant increase in error was noted after the same driver smoked marijuana. He did just about as well as when sober. But researchers caution that a simulator is not a car. There's been no test of driving for long periods of time. The smoker tends to grow preoccupied with a single object. Will this affect his reaction to the total driving experience? So far, the best conclusions seem to be, if you're intoxicated, no matter what the cause, don't get in the driver's seat. And at this stage of the game, measuring what this drug can do should not be left to the individual experimenting with himself. It belongs in the laboratory, where animals are used. One test involves injection of radioactively treated THC. Then scientists trace its path. They're looking for its metabolic fate. What chemical alterations occur while it's in the body? This would indicate how a human being responds to it. Other tests are in the works. It is now known that serious liver damage has occurred in some heavy marijuana users when no previously known cause, such as alcohol or other drugs, is involved. With the support of the National Institute of Mental Health, we're seeking much-needed answers to important questions. How does marijuana affect the heart, the kidneys, brain, nervous system? What are its social implications? But while the scientists work, others are left to cope with the day-to-day problems that arise when this ordinary weed and some young man or woman come together. It's their job to assimilate facts and to clear away the misconceptions which have made a mystery of marijuana for too long.
Do you feel that perhaps from smoking marijuana that Charles would go on to a harder drug, say heroin?
Well, Mrs. Johnson, I don't think that there's any reason to believe, at least from the medical standpoint, that exposure to marijuana and smoking marijuana causes any desire or need to get into a hard drug such as heroin, a really dangerous drug. But there are a couple of other implications to smoking marijuana, and one of them, of course, is that having experimented with marijuana and perhaps not having found it to be physically harmful, many young people think that therefore society has misrepresented the seriousness of other drugs, which they've also prohibited. And therefore the feeling is that they can disregard all the warnings they've heard about the dangers of heroin. Another problem, of course, is that the persons who are the real dealers in marijuana are frequently people who themselves are using hard drugs like heroin. And of course, being exposed to people like that who think that that hard drugs are really quite the way to live, that many young people will be misled into thinking that they also should perhaps consider experimenting with the hard drugs. Your son is likely to tell me that young people want to use marijuana because it's their own special kind of thing. The way that adults, they see it, have alcohol as their own kind of special thing. I think the one fair comment that I can make about it to him, which I believe very strongly, is that young people who are coming to physical and emotional maturity have a lot of problems to cope with. They're growing up. And it makes it even more difficult to cope with this coming to maturity, to introduce the use of stimulants at the same time. A lot of young people are not ready for it. They're not capable of even using it in mild form. They have to recognize that they're making a conscious decision that's going to possibly lead them to being involved with the law. That means expenses for bail and for lawyers' costs. If they're convicted of a crime, it means a criminal record, which means great difficulty in getting jobs, difficulty in getting into colleges sometimes, or getting college loans. They make travel to foreign countries very difficult for them. There are all kinds of licenses and privileges that you cannot get from various states because of this. In effect, a great many life options may be cut off for them. Now, I'm going to lay this out to him, and he will make a decision for himself, Mrs. Johnson, as to what he's going to do in the future.
No one asks that Chuck Johnson and others like him reach any decision that isn't based on facts. But what we don't know constitutes one kind of fact. We really don't know what marijuana does, good or bad, to any individual at a given time. We cannot predict reactions. We do know it's a foreign agent that can be traced to various body organs, but long-term effects are not known. We know less about pot than we do about the relationship between whiskey and cirrhosis, cigarettes and cancer, cyclamates and organic damage. Lastly, rightly or wrongly, legalization of marijuana, if it ever comes, is far in the future. And any change in status will come only after much more is known than we know now.
An age that seeks easy answers.
To relieve headache pain and so its tension, relax. Try the fastest relief known. Doctors prescribe most. The sooner you take it, the better you'll feel. Faster to your headache, better for your stomach. Here's the fastest relief known that restore your composure instantly. If you sometimes suffer tension and sleeplessness, when headache pain makes you tense, irritable, try extra strength tablets. It outsells all other medications for this purpose. That's why you get more complete relief. Prompt temporary relief. All this extra pain reliever at twice as much of the pain reliever doctors recommend most.
Many of the medicines we take are useful, but success has brought dangers too, causing us to turn supermarket drugstores into temples, start each morning with a sacramental pill, and pop pills all day long. Our newest and most dangerous addiction to legitimate and sometimes useful drugs proves especially attractive to those we call nice people. They may be you or me, our parents or our friends. Already an estimated 15 million Americans are involved. The new addict may start off legally with drugs medically prescribed. All too soon, he finds he's mounted a tiger he can't get off. We call them mood changers, tension easers, pep pills, sleeping pills. They're addictive, they're dangerous, but they sound innocent. Chemically, they're amphetamines and barbiturates. To those who abuse them in increasing numbers, they're ups and downs. One-fourth to one-third of all prescriptions written today are either for amphetamines to lift us up or barbiturates to slow us down. This makes them medically respectable. And many otherwise prudent parents caught up in the fast-paced world of modern life soon drift into taking more than the doctor ordered. Before they know it, they're actually pushing drugs onto those they want most to protect and expect most from in the future, their own children.
A lot of people's mothers and fathers are on barbs and tranquilizers, and they have their booze and everything else, and they're using them. And the kid sees it and says, wow, like, you know, what's this? And then he goes out and like he starts doing it.
One of the most dangerous aspects of the new drug addiction is that the drugs abused are legally sanctioned, mass-produced, and available everywhere. They come in the colors of the rainbow, and outside the body do no harm. Inside the body, their effect can be good or bad. Amphetamines elevate us, make us feel good all over, and are used medically in cases of obesity, unnatural sleepiness, depression. Barbiturates, on the other hand, relax epileptics, insomniacs, and highly nervous persons. One lifts, the other depresses. Many people take both pills, but get hung up mostly on one. As amphetamines reduce the appetite, the eventual pep pill popper, sometimes called a speed freak, may get on them first while trying to lose weight.
I would wake up in the morning after getting a good night's sleep from my tranquilizer, and I'd have to immediately take another diet pill so I could get started on the rest of the day.
Well, I started out in diet pills in military school to lose weight, and I was given barbiturates to sleep. So I used to take a few at a time, you know, to lose weight faster and at the same time get high.
When I have to crash study for one night straight through, I use speed.
Well, I take them to stay awake. I've stayed awake as long as about 4 days at a time on pills and making a complete run from New York to Miami without any sleep. I must admit, though, sometimes my eyes play tricks on me.
I had no idea it was a hallucination. That's what a hallucination it was. I mean, I called the cops. I called my friend Mila about 4 times. So people were throwing garbage in here. They're running rubber masks. They're on my fire escape. They're on my roof. They're in the hall.
Running rubber masks.
That was about a 12-hour insanity.
Amphiplex, Amvicel,
Some 8 billion amphetamine pills are produced every year by 55 companies under 88 different trade names. Half quickly disappear from legal channels and get sold on street corners, in school corridors, at truck stops, and at bars. Their use and abuse is strictly 20th century. Developed some 40 years ago, they were used first as a decongestant for clearing stopped-up nasal passages and lungs. Initial devices for inhaling were primitive. Still, they did the work. But even as people suffering respiratory ailments sought relief from amphetamine fumes, scientists noted certain side effects that might mean the drug had other medical uses. Those who had a tendency to overeat suddenly found that they weren't hungry. Patients suffering from narcolepsy, a rare disease in which one nods off instantly to sleep, were kept awake. While London pub crawlers found that taking amphetamines in a drink gave them a high sense of well-being that could not be reached with any other drug easily available. Abuse set in almost immediately. College students began getting high from benzodrine inhalers. 10 years after World War II, Japan reported that 1.5 million teenagers were heavy pep pill users. 1 out of 10 persons arrested in Stockholm in 1965 was shooting speed by hypodermic needle. and overweight amphetamine patients began suffering heart attacks. Scientists began suspecting that what had seemed harmless might gravely alter the processes of even the most primitive living organisms. The female cross spider is a creature of noted regularity. She instinctively spins a web almost classic in its simplicity. Tested first under normal conditions, she wove her web as expected. Now, Dr. Peter Witt of North Carolina's Department of Mental Health administered speed sweetened with sugar water. 18 hours later, the spider was put to work again. This time, she showed definite disorientation. Her web much smaller and tighter, the strands drunkenly irregular.
Imbecile X10.
Many scientists now believe that the bad may outweigh the good so far as amphetamines are concerned, but the pills still roll off the assembly line, and more people find themselves more and more dependent. When they run out, they're as panic-stricken as the most hardened heroin addict.
One morning, it was a Sunday morning, I woke up and I went to take my pills, or my diet pill, and there weren't any. So I was going to get a prescription, but I couldn't. It was Sunday. And I can recall the feeling of total dependence. I had to have that pill.
It was once thought that pep pill users might grow psychologically dependent on speed, but never physically addicted to it. Now we're not so sure. Some clinics report that as many as 2 out of 9 users may be real speed addicts whose bodies grow to crave the drug. Dr. Harris Blumberg has treated users as hung up on speed as they once were on heroin.
Central nervous system.
Well, I stopped shooting heroin and I was shooting amphetamines. I went from one habit to another, truthfully. But when I was shooting heroin, I was away. I came back, and I guess methamphetamine was the thing here, and I jumped right to it. This is the thing my friends were doing, and I jumped right into the environment.
The current speed scene rightfully concerns us for several reasons. It's actually destroying some of our finest young people.
You start shooting more speed, and you start not giving a damn about yourself, and you lose all respect for yourself.
Contact with reality is completely broken.
They don't consider themselves people. They don't consider themselves human anymore, you know. They consider those, some of them think they're big crystal ships, you know, traveling through the universe. And you go blind for a few minutes, you see like skeletons drifting through the universe.
The love ethic, once highly regarded as a product of the new generation, vanishes when speed comes on the scene.
I seen a kid stab a kid in the back because, you know, really just picked up a knife and said, "I hate you," and right in his back.
The speed user who keeps on it is soon no longer satisfied with sniffing it. A pill is not enough. He shoots it mainline, directly into the bloodstream, just like a heroin addict. And that really messes up the works.
I contracted hepatitis 3 times, had heart problems, lost breathing ability, became weak, went out of my mind, went to the mental hospital 3 times.
As if injecting alien chemicals into the bloodstream were not bad enough, the person trapped on speed frequently doesn't know what he's injecting. It's believed that 2/3 of all amphetamines used illegally today are bootleg, and what's included in the final product depends on who's mixing up the brew. The prime ingredient for illicit speed is methadone.
It actually comes in 55-gallon drums. Like the time I was paying for it, I was buying pure methadone. That was going rate is $400 an ounce, pure. And like from here, like they cut it with all these kind of chemicals, strychnine, which is rat poison. And they cut it with that and milk sugar and everything. Ajax cleanser.
I wanted to find out a little bit more. We talked about little uncomfortable experiences you've had.
Made me high and kept me up all night long, and then made me have illusions and hallucinations. And I thought I was really having a good time, but it almost ruined my life. I had a ruptured liver, ruptured spleen, heart murmur, arthritis, and rheumatism, and plus toxin hepatitis. I still didn't learn my lesson, and the doctor told me then if I ever shot any more speed, I would die.
Speed, as you know, is a central stimulant. It stimulates those centers of the brain that control heart action. A person is going to have wide open pupils and heart beating fast and thinking rapidly. thinking so rapidly and in such a confused way that the mind cannot handle it. This is the freak out, acute toxic psychosis.
They said I shot a cop and shoot my wife, and all behind speed. I thought it was 1943. They were taking me to the ovens. You know, you get into those paranoid riffs, don't you? Where you think everybody's chasing you. Well, I completely freaked out, man, and ended up shooting 2 people and completely woke up in a prison.
We now know speed is not just a harmless decongestant or appetite depressant. It's a deadly drug. It can alter a person's mind so that he kills others. He can destroy his own self.
Any friends who have died
Behind speed? Yes, I have. I lost one friend. He was a 16-year-old kid. His liver busted on.
Jerry did a big shot and he overran, and he felt like he was going to die. And so he said to us, take me to the cemetery. I want to see tribute on his grave. And it's a friend of ours who overdosed and died.
He weighed 65 pounds at death. He's 6'2". This is a real kid. No hair, barely no hair on his head, no teeth, all false, blind in one eye.
So we took him to the cemetery, and when Jerry found the gravestone, he fell to his knees and fell over the gravestone and started rubbing it. And he rubbed it so hard, as if he wanted to be inside.
I sat there and got on my hands and knees and kissed his gravestone, swearing I went to meth again and shooting it. Speed is a death rush.
You get these body sensations that your heart's dying and you're dying, and it's like a death thing.
When we feel isolated, shy, rejected, alone, dissatisfied, many of us turn to outside chemical agents for relief. All too frequently, the relief is permanent. Judy Garland, Jimi Hendrix, Marilyn Monroe, Dorothy Kilgallen, Alan Ladd, Inger Stevens. Sometimes taken to produce sleep, sometimes to reduce tension, barbiturates are known by many names. And overtaken, abused, barbiturates are more addictive and more deadly than pure heroin.
Rich, would you slip off your sweater for a minute? I want to just check your chest.
You may start off with 1 or 2 pills to help you go to sleep. Then suddenly you're at 4, 8, 10 a day. And you're not rested, but excited and drunk, like on alcohol, like all the time. And you can't get off.
99. 99. Okay.
This is Rich, a young man with an 8-year downer habit, 25 years old, up to 14 pills a day before he sought medical assistance.
I was becoming a vegetable. The only time I would get up to go out is when I had a score. And then I'd come home, and I'd sit there, and I'd nod, or wherever I had to go, and I would nod, and I would drink tea, and I would nod, and I would drink tea, and, I was turned into a vegetable.
Long-term former user of barbiturates, you might be interested, Rich, that the barbiturates are a family of drugs. They're very closely related to alcohol. And the action of the barbiturates is to interfere with the action of the nerve cells in the brain. And as a person continues to take barbiturates, at first he loses the ability to judge things properly, and the higher centers of imagination, judgment, discretion. And as he continues to take it, of course, he is hardly able to move. He becomes so depressed as to depress the motor centers, the centers that control his arm and legs.
You just give up on living. You really do. It's like a matter of time before you die, and you're just sitting there waiting for it, like all of a sudden it hits you, bang, like you're just waiting for death. And I was thinking about everything that had happened, and I said, wow, I'm out here killing myself for what,
Barbiturates were never intended as a joyride to an unreal world. Scientists had long been searching for a non-habit-forming, sleep-inducing drug. So when Adolf von Baer formulated an acid that did produce sleep, he went to a nearby tavern to celebrate. There, a Belgian artillery battalion, drinking to St. Barbara's Day, helped him to observe the occasion by naming his discovery barbituric acid. The compounds from that acid would become known as barbiturates. Barbiturates they have been ever since. And today, every major drug house has its own product, and every product has its patron.
Tuminal's about the best. Get about 10, 15 of them. That's it. You're dead. You go. You really do the job all the way.
Hard drug halfway houses won't touch pill poppers like Philip.
It got so that I was taking so much Secanol that I was unable to get up, go to work in the morning. While I was in work, I'd sneak out of work, go to the nearest drugstore I knew where I could cop. I got a script from my doctor and took it to the pharmacist where I'd been turning on for a couple years buying cough medicine from him. And the script was for Secanol. They call them Red Devils, sleeping pills, barbiturates. He'll renew the script. Plus, not only does he renew the script, he gives me more than what the prescription calls for.
A lot of people imagine a pusher to be a guy in a black trench coat with a black hat and his collar turned up. But it's not. It's like the guys you grew up with. It's the guy down the corner. It's your next door neighbor. Your family doctor. So many sources, it's unreal.
I tried to stop a couple times by myself, and it's impossible. Your friends can't help you because they're doing dope themselves. They've got their own hang-ups.
Have you had any bad experiences when you stopped using the Tuinal or the barbiturates?
You get sick, like, you're laying on the floor, and you don't realize that you're laying on the floor for, like, at least an hour or so, you know? And I OD'd from that one time, you know? They had to rush me to the hospital. As I woke up, they had me catheterized. They had tubes down my throat. They had tubes in my arm. And my skin was blue.
You can't go cold turkey off barbiturates. You need help from specialists like Dr. Jerome Cohen.
Abrupt withdrawal, if he were to try to stop cold turkey, he'd run the risk of convulsions, which could mean brain damage and possibly even death. The proper withdrawal from barbiturates involves a gradual decrease in the dosage of the barbiturate in question over a period of weeks.
Many people get trapped on ups and downs, a dangerous drug seesaw.
The difference between barbiturates and amphetamine use is marked. The barbiturates are sedatives, they depress the central nervous system. The person taking barbiturates may kind of forget when they last took it and how much they took, and find themselves taking more than they safe to take and overdose themselves. Amphetamines, on the other hand, are stimulants. They wake you up, they drive you, they energize you, and lead to exhaustion eventually. The addict will go on a run for periods of days or maybe even weeks, taking very large quantities, and then he will suddenly realize, or will gradually realize, that he's getting worn out. He may stop and crash, which is a formidable experience for him. The resulting depression can be deep enough to produce death. The sophisticated amphetamine addict will soften his crash using barbiturates to soften the physical discomfort of the crash.
I started off, I had uppers and downers in me. That was like the very first thing. After that, like, I did some acid. I went to Skag for a little while. Then I went back to goofballs, Tuminals, Sucanols, Thorazine, Yellow Jackets, you know, like the whole thing.
You sort of have two kinds of abusers of barbiturates. There are the young, immature adolescents who are trying everything. They're sort of garbage cans, and they'll try anything they get their hands on. They decide they want to try the downers for a while, and barbiturates are easily available, and they'll drop varying amounts of barbiturates. It's a rather erratic kind of pattern. Then there are the young adults and middle-aged adults who are alcoholics and get into a mixed bag with alcohol and barbiturates.
Pill poppers of all descriptions share a need for some kind of internal or external change. They want to be made not more than what they are, but more than what they think they are.
Like, when you're loaded, like, you have all kind of confidence in yourself, and you think you're doing things right, but you're really not. Like, you're just nowhere.
When I was using speed, I was losing a lot of weight. I contracted hepatitis 3 times, had heart problems.
For one brief moment, the person on pills may tell himself he's got all the answers. Actually, he's not in charge at all.
you know, meth controls your mind.
It's like I could do anything then. Like nothing would bother me, nothing would hurt me. You know, like just running around telling each other how cool we were.
I didn't talk, rap, walk around and laid and spaced out.
Before, like, I was on this ego trip, you know, and like, the junk that I was using was building up my ego, you know, like that was my whole self. That was the ego trip. Like the child.
When one gets hung up on pills, we can't afford to wash him out. We've got to hope there's a way to get him back. There are ways, frequently painful ways, that in the end will require the person who got hooked to fight his way back upstream all by himself.
You meet some long hairs, and they produce this drug scene like it's the only thing to do because of what's going on in the world now. The war.
Because today we are a drug-taking society. With alcohol, by crossed from junior high school through college. Is alcohol a drug? Yes, it is. According to all medical and scientific definition, it is. Any substance other than food that has an effect on the mind or pellets, or like alcohol, in liquid form. Specially organized to deal with the problem of the teen.
And I'm an alcoholic.
Adorable? Aw, isn't she cute?
It didn't take much to make me feel high, and I used to like the way it made me feel and the attention I got.
Isn't she adorable? She just keeps drinking.
I used to look forward to these parties.
Alcoholics Anonymous estimates that there are more than twice as many teenage alcoholics as there are heroin addicts of all age groups in this country.
I really got into drinking when I found I could sneak drinks and get away with it. So I've been drinking ever since I was 7, 6 years. I also got into barbiturates for a while when I was about 10, but I really got hooked in alcohol. I like the feeling better, especially from wine and beer. When I couldn't get enough at home without my parents catching on, I'd use my allowance or money I'd steal from my mother's purse and either get some grown-up wino to get me 2 pints and I'd give him 1, or I'd wait for some nice guy to believe that my mother was too busy or sick to go shopping and she'd appreciate if he'd buy a 6-pack of beer. And sometimes I'd even get them to buy me that strawberry or apple wine the same way.
So-called pop wines like strawberry or apple wine may not be too popular with adults, but they are with teenagers.
I'm Jeff, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jeff.
You know, I think I began to enjoy drinking. Not the taste of drinking, but getting drunk, since the first time I tried it. My friend's sister was a stewardess, and she'd bring home these miniature whiskey and wine bottles. I remember the first time. We heard about scotch, so we mixed it with milk. That we really liked. I bet you're gonna really like that. Oh, that's gonna be good. You like it? Later on, we experimented more. But he liked the taste of bourbon, and I became a scotch freak.
Actually, a lot of younger kids are into alcohol because it's easier to get than grass, especially for kids.
About a year ago, my parents found out that I was drinking. You should have seen how glad they were that it wasn't marijuana or some other drug.
Really, that's what happened to me. It's not uncommon for uninformed parents who themselves drink to feel a sense of relief when they discover that their children use good old familiar alcohol instead of something they don't understand and self-righteously refer to as some drug. Unfortunately for these parents and their children, they don't know that alcohol is the biggest drug problem this country has ever had to face. As is frequently the case, parents who themselves are abusers of alcohol don't always tell their children of the psychological and physiological dangers of alcohol dependency, alcoholism. Very few know that the physical damage caused by alcohol abuse is greater than that of any other drug, including heroin. And how many adults know that about 1 out of every 15 people who drinks ends up as an alcoholic or as an excessive drinker, or that it takes about 5 to 50 for the average excessive or heavy drinker to be hurt or destroyed? Obviously, there are parents who drink occasionally and have no reason to fear that they are on the road to alcoholism. But these parents would be wise to consider that not all people are lucky enough not to develop a drinking problem.
Mommy, can I have your olive?
The fact that young people see older people drinking is frequently the reason they start to drink themselves. It's like smoking the drug nicotine. How many young people have started smoking just because they've seen an adult smoke? What teenager isn't bright enough to know that breathing in smoke can't be good for you, especially when it's been established that smoking can be a contributing cause of lung cancer and heart disease? Nicotine addiction is so strong that even with all this knowledge, tobacco is still this country's second most widely used drug. The third most widely used drug, even though it's illegal, is marijuana. As most of us know, marijuana is a drug, not a narcotic. However, unlike alcohol and nicotine, marijuana is a controversial drug. For example, there wouldn't be too much controversy about this statement.
I've been drinking for years and it hasn't hurt me.
And there'd be even less controversy about this statement.
What's the big fuss? Cigarettes yet?
However, there is controversy and also many differences of opinion about marijuana.
It's too soon to know about the physical effects of marijuana.
Every idiot knows that marijuana leads to other drugs.
Richard, there's absolutely no proof that marijuana leads to other drugs. It just isn't.
Denise, marijuana's not physically addicting like hard drugs.
Well, marijuana may not be physically addicting, but sure, it's psychologically addicting.
Oh, Denise.
Hey, man, enough marijuana can really mess up your head.
Come on, man. Marijuana just give you a mild psychedelic trip with no after effects. Even your own mother would notice.
Would you want your 15-year-old sister to smoke grass?
No, I don't, but I don't have the right to stop her either.
Anti-marijuana laws are too soft, too permissive. What we need are stiffer penalties.
Oh, come on, Steve. The laws, any laws about marijuana are not only dumb, but paranoid. Marijuana should be made legal now with the same controls we have for alcohol.
What do you think? And before you decide, what about these opinions?
Look, people who smoke marijuana don't tend to business. They just goof off. They don't have any strong goals. They just kind of drift through life.
That's ridiculous. There's nothing wrong with marijuana in itself. It's just like alcohol or any other drug. Some people can't handle it. They get hung up on it, right? Okay. I do my work just as well as any of you so-called straight people.
No.
Wait, I can't see where there's anything to argue about. Marijuana would be a terrible drug to legalize. I think it would be bad for society and bad for the individual as well. It'd be adding another drug to just a list of drugs that's too long already.
If that's the case, I don't think it's fair for marijuana to be against the law and alcohol to be legal, especially when alcohol has done so much harm to so many millions of people.
No.
So much for the three most abused drugs in America. Next on this drug abuse list are all the millions of pills swallowed for kicks and escape every day. A lot of them stolen out of the family medicine chest. Millions more prescribed by the family doctor and abused by their patients. And millions more picked up from so-called friends. Not the old-fashioned pusher in those old-fashioned comic books and films, but the friends with a hang-up on pills who needs to sell them to earn bread for their own pill-popping needs. And last but not obsolete as yet, the professional pusher who can be found anywhere. It would be too obvious to hear all the familiar details about what's wrong with pills that don't cure a thing. Pills like barbiturates that when you least expect it create a dependency, where the withdrawal without the help of a doctor can be fatal. Pills like amphetamines that can blow your mind and your body, even though you were sure it couldn't happen to you. Most enlightened doctors refuse to prescribe amphetamines now. It's unfortunate that most of us have grown up in a world that discovered pills and so-called miracle drugs, so that it is hard to accept the idea that pills can also do harm, especially when not used for what they were intended. The important question should be, can one find lasting happiness through chemistry? Now, we all know that you can die from a heroin overdose caused by your body needing more and more every time you use it, and that you can die when it's not pure, and especially when it's 10 to 20 times purer than you thought and becomes an automatic overdose. And speaking of dying, let's not forget lung cancer from you-know-what, and cirrhosis of the liver from you-know-what, too. If facts and only facts mean something to you, how about the fact that more people will die from the effects of either tobacco or alcohol this year than from heroin-connected deaths? That is, unless there are some drastic changes in the lifestyles of millions and millions of Americans. Changes in which this is not taken as proof of sophistication or proof of masculinity. If the high cost of living means something to you, it's been estimated that the drug problem is costing you, through losses in business, government, and industry, from $5 to $10 billion a year through absenteeism, inefficiency, wasted materials, and the expensive training replacements. $5 to $10 billion a year that gets passed on to all of us in higher prices and taxes. With alcohol as the #1 troublemaking drug on a rather long list of drugs. Now let's see what happens when the teenage excessive drinker has become an adult alcoholic. Let's discuss this problem with the Director of Industrial Services at the Alcoholism Council of Greater Los Angeles, Mr. Weldon Butterworth. Mr. Butterworth, with the cost to industry being so high, why doesn't industry itself do more about the problem?
Well, Jim, some companies are doing a great deal. But unfortunately, there are those who still have no programs to help the employee with an alcohol dependency problem. They still continue to think of the alcoholic as a specific type and an automatic candidate for Skid Row, not understanding that Skid Row alcoholics are only 3% of the total number of people suffering from alcoholism.
That leaves 97% of the other human beings who are obviously worth the effort of rehabilitation and control of what is judged to be an illness by the medical profession and other enlightened people, enough for it to be covered by leading national medical insurance agencies.
Well, companies who do not have an alcoholism program seem to be operating under an old-fashioned social stigma type of thinking about alcoholism. You can almost imagine them dictating this policy to a secretary.
Miss Smith, take a memo. This company will pay an economic premium for the successful concealment of alcoholism from management's attention. This monetary reward will be paid in terms of job security, promotional opportunities, and fringe benefits. But if an employee's alcoholism reaches the stage where it can no longer be concealed from the casual observation of management, no matter how valuable and irreplaceable this employee may be, the services with this company will be terminated immediately. Miss Smith, read that back to me.
Sir, this company will pay an economic premium for the successful concealment of alcoholism from management's attention.
It would seem that our top executive feels that he's immune.
Being self-employed, he may be immune to the effect and warning in the memo, but he's not immune to alcohol. One of the biggest problems is the waste of manpower at the top management levels. After many years of education and on-the-job struggle to get to the top of their industry or profession, frequently at the peak of their value to their company, thousands of men are lost to alcoholism each year.
Well, Weldon, it would seem to me that it would be good dollars and cents business to recognize the job performance warning signs of alcoholism and alcoholism itself in time to do something about it.
Well, each year, more and more enlightened business organizations are initiating alcoholism programs to identify the early warning signs and to help the alcoholic get treatment. Incidentally, this alcoholism program also helps discover those with a drug problem as well.
What a person snorts, sniffs, or smokes, shoots, drops, or pops, eats or drinks is their own personal business. But when it affects their job performance, then we have a justifiable concern. We started this program as a people program to help our people, to help their families, to deal with the problem effectively, which was formerly causing us a great deal of difficulty. And it's turned out to be exceedingly good business. We have achieved over 70% recovery. We have literally rehabilitated executives for pennies when it would have cost thousands to fire them.
With millions of people employed by the government, members of the armed forces, the government is the largest employer with the largest payroll of all. We can see how important all types of drug abuse can be to all of us who pay taxes.
Jim, the drug and alcohol problem in civilian life, like in civilian life, we have the contact and are expected to live with people in what could only be described, feel the need to prove their manhood, and one of the ways they do this is by drinking. Need to use alcohol in order to relieve anxieties about being in an unfamiliar situation. Along with this, we have peer pressures, which are exercised by other problem drinkers, all of which tend to encourage drinking situations. Now, you add to this the boredom, the loneliness, the unfamiliar surroundings. Our people are away from home, and all these things have their effect. What started out for some people as simple, harmless drinking has suddenly become something else. It's become alcoholism for about 8 to 12%.
Drink kind of early, aren't you?
Had kind of a rough nighter. Just need one to get me going, you know. Klein, you want one?
No, man. It's too early for me.
Hey, Morris, how about you?
That's too early for me. Too early for anybody.
We have developed programs in the military similar to those in industry in which we have emphasized the need to reduce the situations that I've described that produce pressures to drink, Jim.
It is encouraging to note that various military and industrial programs report a 50 to 75% recovery rate for alcoholism. And I guess we would all agree, alcoholism is alcoholism. The individual reasons may be slightly different, but the results are the same. The reasons why people drink are frequently the key as to whether they remain social drinkers, become excessive drinkers, or become alcoholics. The social reasons, drinking because of the occasion or because your friends do, are the most common reasons for young and old. However, there are certain warning signs that help detect the difference between the casual social drinker, the excessive drinker, and the alcoholic. What are the warning signs? One of the most significant signs is when there is a pattern of needing a drink, to do anything that involves overcoming nervous tension or working up courage to do something.
Wow, man, I mean, it's only a party.
He drinks for courage.
I mean, you know almost everybody in there. So what? You know I'm no good at parties unless I've had a drink or two first. Just to relax, man, just to relax.
He is uncomfortable when alcohol is unavailable.
We're going to be late. Why do you have to start mixing yourself drinks now?
Because those squares never serve cocktails before dinner. Besides, I like a drink before dinner.
A drink?
Well, maybe two.
2 drinks? 2 doubles, you mean? What you call getting fortified for the worst, right?
Right.
She has guilt about drinking. He will be lying about drinking.
All right. I might have a very dry martini. First one all week. What are you going to have?
No, not for me. Been on a wagon for a year now. I'll just have a milk.
He has memory blackouts.
Where am I? What am I doing in this cab? Driver, where are you taking me?
Hey, listen, buddy. You held me in front of the Pink Penguin and told me to take you to the base, right?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Alcoholic?
She is irritated when drinking is discussed.
Me, Doctor? You must be out of your mind. I may drink a little more than your average housewife, but that doesn't make me an alcoholic, Doctor.
With him, it's changing from one drink to another. This gentleman used to drink large amounts of beer, but denied he was an alcoholic. When physical symptoms, work, and family problems, when this made no difference in how his work and family life went, he decided his fluid intake was still too high, and, you guessed it, he switched to straight bourbon. She has morning after tremors. To her, the morning after drink is a must.
There's only $18 and some change here, Sal.
For him, memory blackouts are more frequent and more severe.
I have to go to the market. Where's the rest of your paycheck?
I don't know.
You don't know? How many paychecks can you keep losing like this, Sal? You know how important every dollar is to us.
I'm sorry. But I don't remember what happened. To tell you the truth, Linda, I don't even remember getting home.
You don't? Do you realize you came home so drunk you could have killed yourself and any other poor person that got in your way?
I didn't have time to do it.
His schoolwork deteriorates.
You had the entire weekend. Everyone else completed their assignment except you. Once again, that same lame excuse. What's happened to you? You used to be one of my best students.
Nothing.
His work deteriorates.
Look, Lonnie, it's not that you're late all the time, but it's the quality of your work. Hey, look, if you don't like my work, and I don't like this funky job, maybe I ought to quit. Hey, no maybes about it. Quit. Because no one is indispensable, not even you.
Danny, would you please stop now and come to bed?
In a minute.
There is deterioration of family relations.
In a minute, you'll be passed out like every night.
When I feel like going to sleep, I'll go to bed. Now, will you please bug off?
Dad? Dad?
What?
No, you didn't get up, Dad.
In a little while.
Daddy, you promised to take us to the zoo, remember?
Not today.
You promised.
I don't feel well.
'Cause you're drunk and you have a hangover.
Get out! Get out! Both of you! Oh, God.
Yes? Oh, God. Because as an alcoholic parent, he has increased the possibility of his children becoming alcoholics to 80%. The percentage of alcoholics who have had alcoholic parents. Except for unimportant details, the warning signs of alcoholism are basically similar for the young and old, male and female, who develop that particular type of drug dependency. How do you prevent a dependency that does so much harm to so many millions of people every day? One way, at least, is to believe that it is possible that what has happened to so many millions of people can also happen to you. Does he look like a potential alcoholic? Does he? Does she? Does he? Does he? Does he look like a potential alcoholic? Did she look like one? Did he look like one? So what happened? Informed opinion has it that drug abuse starts with an emotional or psychological need. So it would seem logical to get professional help as soon as you can, while it's still a problem of dependency and not of addiction. It would be self-destructive at any age not to do so. Here are alcoholics who have hit bottom. They literally sell their own blood to get money to buy another bottle of what quite appropriately is called slow suicide. How really different from you, from me, are they? Can you imagine them as children at play? Can you imagine what their parents' reactions to them would be now? Does it look like either one of these two ever remembers their childhood days again? Would any one of these people stop or never start their own personal form of drug abuse because of the facts about nicotine, alcohol, uppers, downers, cocaine, quaalude, heroin, etc., etc.? Just because of the facts? The plain and simple facts? And when these plain and simple facts won't do, what will?
Or do you have double standards when it comes to our... How do you know?
Studies concerning marijuana's possibly harmful effects have been made, although they're not yet conclusive. But some facts are known. Some effects have been established. There are apparently few physical manifestations, a reddening of the eyes, lowered body temperature, and a certain inability to coordinate movement. But there are other effects, psychological effects. The marijuana user generally experiences an uncontrollable feeling of hilarity, quite without reason. He exhibits a marked carelessness. His senses and time perception are distorted. He becomes confused, and he displays irresponsibility and poor judgment. And prolonged use may result in a loss of ambition and self-respect because of the induced couldn't-care-less attitude.
But grass is not a dangerous drug like heroin. You don't become an addict.
May not be physically addictive, but it is habituating. You can come to depend upon it psychologically. That might be even worse. There's no cold turkey for that.
What it really does is expand your mind. Makes you see things more clearly. Makes you more creative. Really, it does. All the painters and writers, they all say so.
They only think they create better things.
Yeah, maybe they do.
Anyway, Tom, it is illegal. Every time you blow a marijuana cigarette, you take a chance on blowing your future.
Oh, come on, Pop. All my friends smoke pot. They're not criminals.
Only because they haven't been caught yet.
Two viewpoints, two opinions. But the relationship between Tom and his father is basically a good one. Tom's father believes in his son, and he challenges him, find out the actual facts about smoking grass, the pros and cons, fair and square. Don't hear only what you want to hear. And then if Tom is still honestly convinced there's no harm in doing it, nothing further will be said. Tom agrees. He's only smoked pot occasionally for a few weeks. He's really new to the scene.
Well, here, you can start with this.
Oh, Pop, come on. Establishment propaganda.
Read it anyway.
Yeah, sure, later. But I've got a better source of information.
Tom seeks the help of his friend, Mac, a couple of years his senior, the boy who first introduced him to pot. Mac thinks Tom's project is real square, but he agrees to get him all the dope. No pun intended. He knows just where to start Tom's education. At a garden pot party held by one of Mac's friends. Smoking grass is a private affair and doesn't harm anybody, he's told. It's a groovy way of relaxing, opening your senses. Tom is most interested in what he sees. These people, most college students, bright and well-adjusted, very sure of themselves and their ability to handle anything. Obviously, they are all able to blow pot occasionally without ill effects. Well, almost all of them. Pot doesn't have the toxic effect of cigarettes, he's told, and it doesn't lead to the excesses of behavior that alcohol does.
Inability to coordinate movement.
The negative effects of smoking grass are exaggerated. All it is a neat way to dispel the problems of the day for a little while.
Uncontrollable hilarity without reason.
Mac has managed to get himself stoned. He has a great idea. He'll take Tom to see someone who can give him the real lowdown, a true expert on the grass scene.
Irresponsibility and poor judgment.
Where's your head?
Quit bugging. Nothing happened.
Mac takes Tom to a psychedelic shop, a head shop. The place is something else, out of sight. a pot smoker's supermarket, a psychedelicatessen. It's run by a man named Harry. Harry is a real veteran of the grass scene, and he gives Tom the word. He's very persuasive. Everyone, but everyone's on grass. All the big ones, of course. The best writers, the best musicians, the best artists. It's definitely the scene. Tom is impressed with the imaginative, creative posters displayed on the wall. And he asks Harry about the artist. But it's Mac again who has the answer. He knows the artist. Man, he painted those posters a couple of years ago. His pad's nearby. Why not go over and meet him? Why not, indeed?
Hey, man, got any spare change?
Sure. Here.
Loss of self-respect.
Waco, the artist, is pleased and flattered at the visit and lights up a joint in honor of his visitors. Sure, he blows pot. Has been for years. It's great, man. Enhances the senses, opens your mind, stimulates real creativity. Those conventional posters of the old days were just so much junk, Waco tells them. His real inspirations come to him now when he's stoned on grass. This new work, now that's out of sight.
They only think they create better things.
Waco insists grass is the greatest. That's where real expansion of your mind and talents can be found. Turn on, tune out of the rat race and its square problems, and tune in on real self-knowledge and creative power.
Waco, come quick.
Bunny is Waco's wife. There's trouble, big trouble. The man is busting her younger brother. With her brother. The officer explains that Jim and the evidence found will be taken to the police station. She can get all further information there. Tom is impressed with the calm efficiency of the officers and the compassion they show for Bunny. They never lose their cool, even in the face of verbal abuse hurled at them by some of the onlookers. Bunny and Waco want to go to the police station, and Mac and Tom decide to tag along. At the police station, while Waco's talking to the desk sergeant about her brother. He knew he was taking a chance on that pickup, she says, but he just had to have his grass.
Addictive, but habituating. You get to depend on it psychologically.
Tom wants to think, so many thoughts are crowding his mind. Marijuana, cannabis sativa, or Indian hemp, weed, grass, pot. It can become a stimulant or a depressive or an hallucinatory agent, which affects the central nervous system and reacts differently and unpredictably on each individual user, occasionally with disastrous results. Tom has company. A police officer has noticed his interest in the display. Does he have any questions? Well, Tom is out after information, pro and con. What are the facts, he asks. Easily, with friendly informality, the officer speaks to Tom. No lecturing, no sermonizing. Pot smoking, quite apart from being illegal, is a problem. The psychological dependency generated by pot is probably its greatest danger. Plus the fact that so many young smokers who can't cope with the everyday problems of growing up seek an ersatz maturity through it. Kids who get high repeatedly don't come down. There's a wholesome abandon. Smoking marijuana all too often leads to the use of more dangerous stuff. Take it from one who runs into the young victims of just that every day. Users stick with other users and addicts who can easily get them on harder stuff. Every user is a potential dealer. Some 95% started with pot. Not every pot smoker goes on to heroin, of course. A personality factor is undoubtedly largely responsible for that step. Very likely the same personality factor which turned the user on to pot. Yes, organized crime is involved in pushing marijuana. After all, it may well be a first step to real addiction, where the big money is. And every pot smoker indirectly supports big-time narcotics dealers and criminals. These dealers sometimes even get cute. They've been known to mix other drugs in the grass, hoping for a quick and dependable push towards addiction, and impurities mixed in with the average cut of marijuana. Maybe smoking pot isn't physically harmful to the young occasional user, although this is far from certain. As recently as 1914, heroin was sold over the counter as harmless because its deadly properties were not fully known. But consider this. Both alcohol used in excess and marijuana are equally capable of producing erratic behavior and dependency. Maybe there is a similarity between the social drinker and the pot smoker, yet it's not quite the same. The daily drink may not be the best thing in the world, but a man who takes a drink after his day is done has worked. He has achieved, he has coped, and he wants to relax. Not so the teenage user. He deliberately seeks to tune out, cop out. He uses his grass as a mental crutch because he fears to stand on his own. He may never learn to cope with the inevitable everyday problems of living. He may well into the left-behind generation. Does smoking grass lead to crime? It can, quite easily, as can any driving need when the one possessed by it is without the means to satisfy it. And legalizing the use of marijuana is not the answer. Of the over 130 member nations of the World Health Organization, not one is for such a step. One nation did try it, with such dire results to its societal welfare within a few years that the permissive stand was diametrically reversed, and today the death penalty is imposed for mere possession. In the United States, a less harsh, more realistic legal attitude than exists might be the answer. But in the end, smoking marijuana to blow your mind is like throwing sand in a delicate machine and hoping nothing goes wrong. Mac has had enough of the gloomy scene. He's itching to split. It's getting late. Tom still got to see where it's at.
The left-behind generation. It can lead crime.
You look like you've got bread, man. Give.
There's nothing wrong with smoking marijuana. It's no worse than taking a drink.
A 20-year study of marijuana smokers in Greece showed a frightening personality change and permanent brain deterioration.
There are still too many unanswered questions about the effects of smoking marijuana. Exhaustive tests are being made. Let's wait and see.
Man, you look uptight. You need a little graft.
No.
On the house.
No, thanks. He's just a kid.
He's old enough to have a buck. He's old enough to blow pot. It's easy money, man.
Tom's impressed with what he has experienced. Nobody of the establishment lectured him, just gave him straight facts. Only the pot smokers seemed obsessed with the idea of turning others on. One afternoon, Tom again has a talk with his father. He's looked at both the pros and cons of blowing pot. He's not convinced that grass is all that harmful, but there is. We've already got our hang-ups with smoking and drinking. We know the consequences we face doing it. Why add another hang-up by blowing pot? Especially since that are not known. Tom has decided what he'll do. It would be stupid. After all, he's no psychological cripple, unable to cope. Who needs a grass crutch? Much better to keep off the grass.
Ignorant misery, pain, despair. Used with knowledge, help. Drugs affect the body in many ways. Bacteria may be causing a disease. A doctor may cure it with an antibiotic or some other drug that kills bacteria. Or some organ such as the thyroid gland may not be working properly. It might be the lungs, the heart, the stomach, and the intestines. The trouble can often be helped by some special drug that affects that particular organ. Or a drug may work on the complex system that regulates every part of the body. Drugs that affect the nervous system work in many ways. Ever felt like this? Ever had a fever? Aches in every muscle. You remember. You might have taken a drug, aspirin. Aspirin helps aches and pains, and it also lowers fever, in part by working on the nervous system. The aspirin tablet is absorbed through the stomach and intestines. Within half an hour, molecules of the drug will reach the cells of the brain. There it will begin to affect that aching feeling that begins in the muscles. In the microscopic spaces between the muscle fibers, there are countless nerve endings called receptors that pick up the messages from the aching muscles. Each receptor sends signals along a nerve fiber into the spinal cord and up into the brain. These electrochemical impulses pass into a lower part of the brain, which controls messages having to do with pain. From here, impulses pass to the higher part of the brain, the cortex, probably where our sick friend forms the idea that his muscles ache. he thinks how uncomfortable he is. Maybe changing position will help. Impulses race to the parts of the brain that move his muscles. The messages go out. Feel better? No? Well, the aspirin will help. One of the several effects that aspirin has is on the part of the brain that controls pain impulses. Pain impulses still come in, but as the aspirin begins to work, not as many go out. Our friend just doesn't feel the ache as much. By careful use of a drug, he has changed one action of the nervous system. Aspirin also works in another way, by making you flushed and making you sweat. This helps to lower your fever. The aspirin works on a special part of the brain that controls the temperature of the body. This is one of many complex nerve centers in the brain that controls the working of your body's organs without any conscious thought on your part. When the special brain center begins to be affected by the aspirin, it sends out impulses to the sweat glands, causing them to produce more moisture. When the sweat evaporates, it cools the body. Impulses also affect the surface blood vessels, which expand and carry more of the overheated blood to the surface of the body where it can cool. Complicated? Yes. And these are only a few of the ways that a drug can act on the nervous system to help you when you're sick. There are dozens of other drugs that a doctor can prescribe when he needs to change the action of a person's nervous system. Only a doctor has the knowledge to know which to use or how much to use. The wrong drug or the wrong amount can be a poison. For instance, if 2 aspirin tablets will help your fever, why shouldn't 20 make you all well? Don't try it to find out the answer. Many young children have eaten several sweetened aspirin tablets thinking they were candy and died. Speaking of poison, what would you think of someone who decided to have a bowl full of strychnine for breakfast? Impossible? Well, here's a deadly poison that some young people play with for kicks. The glue sniffers. Fumes from the chemicals are breathed in through the lungs. Molecules of the poison are carried through the body and deep into the cells of the brain. Along with the kicks come nausea, dullness, headaches, shaking, and other unpleasant feelings. A child can easily kill himself by continuing to breathe the fumes, but luckily, this doesn't happen often. Though most drugs can be poisonous, when they're used correctly with a doctor's instructions, they have great medical value. There are 2 principal kinds that affect the nervous system. One is the kind we call a stimulant, a drug that stimulates the cells in some part of the brain to work faster. The other kind we call a depressant, a drug that slows the impulses from the cells in parts of the brain. Sleeping pills, or barbiturates, are the commonest kind of depressant drug, and useful too when properly used. But there are people who take these so-called goofballs for kicks. A small amount makes the person feel relaxed and friendly, but slowed down. More, and the person gets sluggish, gloomy, sometimes wanting to fight. Then collapse. A brain out of order throws the whole body out of order. Breathing gets slower and slower. The heart is weak. Blood pressure drops dangerously. This collapse may be more than a deep, deep sleep. In just one city, about 450 people die each year from barbiturates. Hours later, the body labors to get back to normal. Kicks, a strange kind of kicks. Another kind of depressant, both useful and dangerous, comes from the opium poppy, the various drugs that are made from opium. When a patient is in severe pain, morphine is the most helpful drug that a doctor can give. Codeine is another drug which your doctor may have prescribed in a cough medicine. It has a special effect on the brain center that controls coughing. The strongest and most dangerous drug of all is heroin. A person who starts using heroin for kicks gets a pleasant feeling of well-being for a while. Then he gets drowsy and unable to think clearly. He sits doped, doing nothing, letting the world go by. When the drug wears off, he wants that pleasant feeling again, but he finds he has to keep increasing the dose. The more he uses, the more he needs to get that same feeling of well-being. The disaster of heroin creeps up quietly, slowly. After a while, if he doesn't get the drug, he gets violently sick. He may even die. He's an addict with a habit that's almost impossible to get rid of. He spends the rest of his life just trying to keep up his supply of heroin, usually by stealing, the only way he can get enough money. And somehow the saddest part is that soon the drug doesn't even make him feel good. He needs it just so he won't feel sick. No fun, no drive, no future, no life. The other principal drugs that work on the nervous system are the stimulants, the ones that cause parts of the brain to work faster. One of the most dangerous, sometimes called bennies. Doctors may prescribe these in small, for instance, those who are depressed. But suppose somebody takes pep pills looking for kicks. What might this disturb cells do to the body? The heart often goes out of order and beats irregularly. The walls of the blood vessels tighten, which shoots the blood pressure up. The muscles jerk. The person is jittery and restless. He may have convulsions. And the brain, with billions of extra impulses racing through it, confusion. Feelings is irritable, tense, anxious. He may fly into a rage. Sleep for a long, long time. When the effects finally wear off, he will be terribly tired and depressed. Two other drugs, marijuana and LSD, disturb the nervous system seriously. Both drugs do something to the brain that distorts the appearance of the world. A brain under the influence of marijuana distorts the sense of space and time. The brain may tell a person that his car is going this fast instead of this fast. With LSD, commonplace things seem to have great significance. But LSD destroys judgment. Some people believe they can fly. Some people believe they are God. Recently, this happened. Marijuana and LSD affect different people differently. Sometimes they make a person feel pleasant and dreamy. Sometimes terrified. Sometimes wildly irresponsible. And always, they keep a person from thinking clearly. For the person who plays with marijuana, there is a special danger. The danger of looking for bigger kicks with more dangerous drugs. And for the person who plays with LSD, there is a very special danger. Severe mental illness. Also, many doctors now believe that repeated use of LSD causes permanent brain damage. Young people distort and damage their nervous systems with drugs for different reasons. They may feel out of the crowd and want to be in. They may be trying to find some excitement in a bored life. They may think this is a way of appearing big and unafraid. Or they may have problems they don't want to face. What do you think these young people are like? Would you guess that they are strong or weak? Would they be responsible? Mature for their age? Might they have problems in getting along in the world? What do you think?
Kid. There is no friends, there is no trust, there is no kind of relationship with nothing but that little bag of white powder.
Ray may call it horse, or smack, or skag. It's heroin. For years, he thought it a problem confined to the ghettos and to blacks, or musicians, or both. So we shrugged it aside as something that concerned other people. Then, overnight, heroin broke out of the ghetto, and it was suddenly our young, not theirs, who were involved.
I was over at a friend's house one night, and they were all cooking up the thing, you know, getting into syringe and they were shooting it. And I asked him what it was, and he told me, this is heroin. And I said, wow, really? It was like the first time I ever saw anybody do heroin. So, like, I asked him if they had any more left. He said, yeah. So, like, later on when I saw my friend, I turned him on to it. And then, like, he knew someone who turned him on, and that guy would get his friend and turn him on, and like that. And before you got, wow, from all over, maybe 300 kids, 350 kids that are doing heroin like out in Jenkintown, Abington, places like that. Olney, Logan, all these at Chestnut Hill, all the surrounding communities, they were doing it too. So yeah, they're all doing heroin. Tripping, blowed out on skag, just, everything. It's just like a bug, like a disease, an epidemic. Something that's really got to be stopped before it gets everywhere. Because it's getting everywhere now. A lot of people don't even realize where it is.
What do you use? Swag. Oh, you sure about that?
Yeah.
Behind the cold type in funeral corteges, the facts of heroin are intensely personal and come only when the addict can face reality.
It has the ingredients marked on the label, and it's 50% heroin, and it's 30% rat poison, and 20% battery acid. That's the new dope on the streets.
The tragedy of heroin in the 70s is the tragedy of young people who start out trying it and end up totally possessed. It is, in some part, the story of Tony, who we've seen here, fighting her way back, and Robbie, still hung up, and hung up hard.
Hi, Deb. How are you? That's good. Are you coming out later? What time? Can you get your car? You sure? Do something for me before you come? See if you can find some money in the house, all right? Yeah, I started doing heroin in 1967. At the time, there was only a select few of us, 8 or 10 of us, just in one area that was doing heroin. And then as the years, well, not even the years, the months went by, like, more kids just in our immediate area started doing it.
Heroin addiction is a contagious disease. It's usually passed from one friend to another.
Then it was just another drug to try, and like grass and acid and those hadn't really done anything to me and hadn't hurt me in any way, so I figured, well, heroin couldn't hurt me neither. But it's just something in a young man's mind that, you know, says, this couldn't happen to me. It couldn't be me. It's not going to destroy me. It's just something I'm going to do for a while. And it always turns out the other way around.
I started shooting dope when I was 13.
10 and 11-year-old addicts are turning up in every city in the land.
12 or 13, I don't remember. This was in the summertime. My birthday comes at the end of the summer, so I might have been 12 and I might have been 13, but that really isn't the basic part of it. It's just that a 12 or 13-year-old person can get a hold of something to shoot dope with.
Well, as I say, when I started drugs, we didn't know anybody. We didn't know any places to cop. We hardly knew any people. So we used to just have to ride to the corners down in North Philly because we had heard from somebody else you could drive down there and they just walk right up to your car. So, you know, curiosity, we have to find a place to cop, so we drive down there. And
curiosity is credited by 2/3 of California addicts questioned as having led to first experimental use of heroin.
You pull up for the first time, you're looking at them, and like they look at you, they're not sure, you know, because they're not used to dealing with white boys. You could be cops. And eventually you always get one that just like walks up and says, how many you want? And you say 5, and you hand the money, and he hands you the bags, and you take off.
Mother and father were separated at the time, and my father used to come see us on the weekends. And, you know, I was trying to convince myself that my father loved me. I would go around to my grandmother's house and wait for him there. And I'd call him up and ask him when the cover's over. You know, and he said, I'll be there in an hour. I said, okay, I'm waiting for you. And I keep sitting there, and I keep sitting there. And he wouldn't show up.
My father went to a good high school, went to a very good college. He graduated with honors up there. He always got honors all through school. And he became an accountant, and he came out, and like we bought one of the first homes in our house. My father has a nice car all the time, you know. He bought my mother all nice things, everything she wanted. And like everything I've wanted, I've gotten like throughout most of my life.
But they didn't really care, otherwise they would have said, look, stupid, why are you acting that way? And why don't you knock that off and start taking care of yourself and being responsible to yourself and other people?
Yeah, well, I was really ready for drugs when I got them, because like what led me to them was mostly my friends talking about them. Like you hear, like, what's that so-and-so smoked some grass the other night, just one did that.
One group of Washington, D.C. suburban students say friends are the most important single factor in starting them out on drugs.
I remember I was shooting dope that I had such a need to belong to anything. Anything under the face of this earth. because I felt like I was totally alone.
And for the first couple months, it was just like a nice thing. I didn't need it. I didn't want it every day. I used to do it maybe 2-3 times a week. And then after about 6 months, like, I started doing it like maybe just 1 bag a day, and then it would go to 2. And finally it got to a point where I had to go out and get it. There was nothing I could do about it. Like, it just had me, not only mentally, but physically.
You could get high. You wouldn't have to deal with any of your feelings or any of your emotions. You could block that whole thing out.
I don't think my mother knew at the time that I was on heroin until I approached her with the thing that I wanted to go into Northwest Mental Health Center as a rehabilitation sort of thing. I figured if I could get away from it, you know, for like a little period of time, say a month or so, then I could lick it. And she was the first one I confronted with this. And when I told her, it was just like such a hurt, shocked look on her face. And I thought that she knew, because she used to find syringes in my room and burnt spoons and bags. I guess, like, she must have thought I was shooting something else. I guess she figured that heroin couldn't be what I was doing. You know, like, she heard about it and read about it, but it couldn't happen to her son. She didn't want it to. I guess that's why she never could make the realization to herself that it did. And when she told my father, he even seemed more surprised than her. And it shocked me, too, because, like, I thought they knew.
One very short, simple, sweet sentence. The way it feels not to have drugs when you're hooked on heroin is you feel like selling your mother. And if somebody would buy her, you'd sell her.
Sometimes I didn't have money, and I'd have to take money out of my mother's pocketbook or something. I'd just steal my father's car, and then I'd have to drive all the way downtown or something, just to get a hold of 1 or 2 bags so I could sleep the rest of the night.
And with his habit being up like at $3.50 a week, and he's got to do other things to get his money together. He's done some pretty crazy things, you know, that are considered criminal acts.
Out there shooting dope, I could take and maybe burglarize an apartment or burglarize, you know, some of the houses on my street, steal TV or a record machine or whatever I could carry, and sell it to somebody's neighbors, and they would know.
The addict like Robbie or Tony, who resorts to crime, must steal from 4 to 10 times what his habit really costs, because heroin is absolutely illegal. A complex underworld operation is needed to get heroin to this country. To show how enormous the profits eventually will be, we start with a typical $40 crop of bootleg poppies grown by a Turkish farmer halfway around the world. As the pods mature, the liquid sap is collected. Then, hardened into raw opium, the illegal narcotic crop is sold to a broker in Istanbul. From Istanbul, the opium is smuggled into the Lebanese market city of Beirut. Here, when racketeer refiners have finished their work, they will have extracted 1 kilo of morphine from every 10 kilos or 22 pounds of raw opium. The narcotics trail heads west from Lebanon. The next stop will be laboratories in and near Marseille. Here, Italian and French racketeers will turn the morphine, kilo for kilo, into pure heroin. Most of it is aimed directly at the profitable North American market. Clearing the Gibraltar Straits, the trail splits into 3 legs. Devious and quite ordinary means of smuggling are employed. The southern leg brings heroin in by way of Latin America. Montreal is a major staging area for moving the drug in from the north. The greatest portion comes directly to New York City, far and away the largest distribution point for the... Before the addict gets to buy his $5 street corner pack, a sophisticated system of distribution must be set in motion. After the underworld wholesaler takes delivery, he begins to break each kilo into quarter-kilo lots for distribution to jobbers. Still pure heroin, but now the cutting starts. 4 parts milk sugar or quinine to 1 part heroin reduces the powerful white powder to 20% strength. Broken into smaller lots, it's sold to the street retailer at 5 an ounce. As it passes through each pair of hands, each takes a cut, until finally, the product, ready for warming, dissolving, and shooting, comes to the Robbie or Tony or Johnny who's waiting on the corner. And the 1 kilo of pure heroin, extracted from $40 worth of poppies, has been turned into 56,000 bags or caps of roughly 5% strength that altogether sell for $280,000. Enough heroin is smuggled into the U.S. each year to support a 6-bag-a-day habit for 416,000 Americans trapped on skag. Crimes to support that habit total not millions, but billions of dollars. To the man who's trapped, the real price is much more personal.
Finally, it got to a point where I woke up in the morning, I had to go out and get it. There was nothing I could do about it. Like, it just had me. Not only mentally, but physically. Just, I wake up in the morning with cramps in my stomach, my legs would be hurting, and like my bed would be just soaked from sweat, and during the night to get the chills, and I used to wake up with mad headaches, and my eyes would be tearing and everything. And then I'd have to drive all the way downtown just to get a hold of 1 or 2 bags so I could sleep the rest of the night.
Trapped on the skag, the addict quickly finds his body needs the drug as urgently as it needs water.
A friend of mine just died about 3 months ago. And, like, the paper built up said it was bad heroin.
Death may come from overdose, from a poisonous substance with which heroin is cut, and some people, shooting heroin for the first time, die instantly from a fatal chemical or systemic reaction.
I went to Lexington, Kentucky, in '68, in November. And after a while, I started, gaining weight and started, throwing up and all those wonderful symptoms. And they found out that I was 7.5 months pregnant. I wanted to stop slowly because I didn't want my daughter to be born with a habit. And I started thinking, what the hell am I going to do? Am I going to shoot dope for the rest of my life, or am I going to try to be a mother, try to take care of my kids, and try to do something for myself?
When a person doesn't want to shoot dope all his life and wants to do something for himself, where can he turn? Prisons harden drug habits. The great majority of those who go to federal facilities at Lexington are back on dope within 5 years. Santa Monica's Synanon opened a little more than a decade ago. Today, scores of other residential homes run by former addicts require new members to come off drugs cold turkey, no medication. They combine shared work with tough talk.
Are you smart?
But you run around.
No, we didn't say that. We said, are you smart? Yeah, I'm smart. Oh, a smart person goes around putting needles in his arm. He goes around burning holes in his clothes and in his fingers. And steals and cheats and puts himself in a position to go to jail for a long time or maybe kill himself. That's smart. Well, I've never been to jail. I've never been to jail. You're not answering my question. Is that smart? To go to jail? No.
Cadenzia House is a therapeutic community where men and women live together and learn to grow up. The program takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months for an individual to be emotionally equipped to step back out into the community, a self-reliant person. What actually occurs in Cadenzia is a growing process. A dope fiend or a guy using drugs comes in and emotionally is a baby, and he or she has to learn how to grow up.
One of the ways that you do that is by reaching out, and that simply means to ask somebody to love you. And then you're so scared, you're scared of a lot of rejection. Maybe the person won't like you, which is probably one of the reasons why a lot of people are shooting dope. Afraid of not being accepted, afraid of getting their feelings hurt.
If somebody happens to say something to you that you don't like, you're not going to act like, hey, baby, we're going to become friends. We're about people.
We're family.
But therapeutic communities like Cadenzia and Synanon don't work for everyone. Alternatives are needed.
I went in the hospital for 11 days, but like I said, I didn't like it because they locked me up. So I left there.
Stuck a spike in your arm. And all I do is ask, give me the person's name, and like I use a little muscle and we take care of that. But you stuck the spike in your own arm.
I also agree with you now.
So you're going to have to take it out.